Christmas is widely associated with moments of peace, family gatherings, celebrations with friends, gift exchanges, and beautiful decorations. However, the roots of this holiday go far beyond modern traditions. Today, let's explore how Christianity has shaped the celebration of Christmas over the centuries, from its origins to the way we know the date today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let's get started. Number 1. Saturnalia. Every December for 7 days, ancient Rome celebrated Saturnalia, a festival dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture and harvest. During this period, from December 17th to 23, the city's routine changed drastically. The fields had already yielded their crops, schools were closed, and even the courts suspended their activities. In this setting, everyone was free from their usual obligations and hierarchies that seemed unbreakable the rest of the year. It was customary to choose a king from among the humblest people, someone who would rule over others for a short time. Slaves, who were normally subject to strict rules, acted and dressed like their masters, while the masters took on a servant role. The social order was flipped and fun was unleashed. Games and betting didn't shock anyone, and it was common for people with few resources to go around houses singing in exchange for food. These songs, which later inspired King's carols and Christmas carols, echoed amidst simple gift exchanges, often small wax or ceramic figures known as cicciolaria. Over time, Saturnalia was removed from the official calendar, but its practices didn't disappear. They became part of European culture, went through the Middle Ages, and re-emerged centuries later, influencing the very Christmas we know in the 18th century. Number 2. Juvenalia. On December 25th, the Romans held Juvenalia, a pagan festival that highlighted youth and honored Mithra, an invincible solar deity whose cycle was renewed on this date. This moment, aligned with the worship of Saul and Victus, kept the festive atmosphere started by Saturnalia alive, creating a link between past customs and what was yet to come. Number 3. Saul and Victus. In Rome, the day dedicated to the birth of the unconquered sun, Natalis Solis Invicti, marked the moment when light overcame darkness. This symbolic pattern, tied to the idea of rebirth, later served as the basis for associating Jesus with the light of the world in the Christian tradition, which was still taking shape at that time. In the early days, many Christians lived alongside these pagan celebrations, participating in rituals that took place on the night of December 24th. Families gathered, prepared a dinner to mark the date, exchanged their usual clothes for more special attire, and awaited dawn with songs, music, dancing, and bonfires. In other parts of Europe, the winter solstice was also celebrated, though each place adapted the practices to its own setting. Number 4. Yule. The ancient pagan celebration of Yule played an important role in forming various Christmas traditions. This festival, associated with the winter solstice, took place on December 21st among Germanic peoples, although the date could vary by region. In Scandinavia, this period was seen as a milestone for the end of the year and the preparation for a new cycle, a time to gather family and friends and face the longest night of the year surrounded by light and warmth. Attention turned to fire and light, symbols capable of bringing energy in the face of winter darkness. Cattle were sacrificed in honor of the gods, and the meat was served at large feasts. Honey, a drink enjoyed by Odin, was present, reinforcing the connection between the celebration, the sacred, and the strengthening of community bonds. A tree representing Yggdrasil, the tree of life, was placed under the roof, integrating the domestic environment with the divine sphere. At the end of the meal, it was customary to burn this tree around the bonfire, believing that the flames would ward off unwanted spirits and ensure the fertility of the land. Over time, Yule approached Christmas and was incorporated into Christian traditions, becoming an alternative name for the date itself. Some customs persist. In Great Britain and Scandinavian countries, for example, a large log is still burned, and this practice inspired the creation of log-shaped candies, keeping the memory of a ritual that blended respect for nature, the renewal of cycles, and the celebration of light in the heart of winter alive. Number 5. The other side of Yule. During the Yule period, in some regions of Germany, the celebration took on a tone marked by tensions and fears. Followers of Odin would exchange provocations and point out who among them might escape the flames of hell, believing that a divine presence watched over them from above. This atmosphere of uncertainty and judgment reinforced the idea that the festival wasn't just about the natural cycle, but also the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds. Further north, in even colder lands, the same celebration approached a meeting between the living and the dead. There, a kind of supernatural hunt took place, where Odin and other deities gathered spirits and shadowy entities in a loud parade across the skies. The procession echoed the notion that Yule wasn't limited to family traditions or winter rest, but also reflected the fear of the unknown and the belief in invisible forces shaping each person's destiny. Number 6. Two Christmases. In the beginning, Christmas was split into two very different paths. On one side, there were those who went to churches on December 25th to light candles and sing hymns honoring the birth of Jesus. These songs, over time, turned into the well-known Christmas carols, preserving the spiritual meaning of the date. Meanwhile, another group of people followed a different route, marked by pagan customs. They gathered for parties with lots of drinking, excesses, and an atmosphere far removed from the solemn environment of religious ceremonies. Thus, two ways of celebrating Christmas coexisted, each leaving its mark on the long history of this holiday. Number 7. The Nativity Scene. The tradition of the Nativity Scene emerged around the year 400 AD, when Pope Sixtus III in Rome ordered the creation of a space to visually present the birth of Jesus. Over time, these places, known as pizzerias, became an important way to tell this story to the public. By the 18th century, these representations began to be handmade, valuing every detail of the scene. The practice spread across Europe, but the British Isles took longer to adopt it. While other peoples were already including nativity scenes in their customs, the British were a bit slower to incorporate this tradition into their Christmas celebrations. Thus, the nativity scene built its path, bringing communities together around the narrative of Jesus' birth. Number 8. Christmas in medieval England. In medieval England, Christmas was celebrated intensely and lasted for 12 days, up until January 6th. During this period, the entire society got involved. Both the rich and the poor prepared for the holiday in advance, blending Christian elements with cultural traditions from pagan festivities. The name Christmas, or Christ's Mass, first appears officially in records from 1038. And over the centuries, the celebration combined the birth of Christ with customs from Saturnalia, Yule, and other earlier traditions. While churches held processions, the streets and universities saw the selection of the Christmas King or Bean King. This character, not related to the government, took on the role of leading the festivities, bringing everyone together in an atmosphere of music, plays, gift exchanges, and candle and matchlight decorations. The food reflected the event's grandeur. Decorated boar heads made their way to the table, often served with warm drinks made from beer, honey, cinnamon, and brandy. Alcohol was a big part of the celebrations, and homes were adorned with typical winter foliage, creating a cozy scene enhanced by the season's cold. Thus, medieval English Christmas balanced devotion, ancient rituals, collective fun, abundant feasts, and a festive mood that kept everyone engaged until the last day of celebration. Number 9. The ban on Christmas. In the 17th century, England went through a turbulent time regarding the celebration of Christmas. In 1644, the Puritans banned the holiday, arguing that its origins weren't fully Christian, and that the birth of Jesus wasn't specifically mentioned in the scriptures. By making the celebration illegal, they sparked outrage among the population, causing disturbances that reignited tensions and contributed to the escalation of the English Civil War. Popular demand for the return of the holidays persisted until Charles II ascended to the throne, and the ban was lifted. Even so, Christmas came back somewhat quietly, reflecting a delicate balance between popular tradition and the new era's beliefs. Gradually, the holiday regained its place, adjusting to the political and religious changes that would shape English history. Number 10. Mistletoe. During Christmas, there's a tradition that might seem just a romantic gesture, but its roots are deeply intertwined with Greek and Scandinavian mythology. It's the habit of kissing under a branch we now call mistletoe. This ritual, which has lasted for centuries, embodies the power of reconciliation, love, and peace. In Greek tradition, it was believed that morta, the name for mistletoe, had the ability to mend broken relationships. When relatives, friends, or partners drifted apart due to disagreements, a kiss under the morta was a way to seal renewed harmony. This simple yet meaningful gesture became a symbol of mutual understanding and forgiveness. In Scandinavian mythology, mistletoe appears in a story about the goddess Frigg. Legend has it that the death of her son Balder, caused by an arrow made of mordigian, another name for the same plant, plunged her into such deep mourning that her tears turned into the delicate whitish fibers of this sacred branch. Seeing Frigg's suffering, the other gods found a way to bring Balder back to life. With her son's return, the goddess declared mistletoe a symbol of love and reconciliation. From then on, any conflict that arose was to be forgotten with a kiss and a hug under its branches. Number 11. Changing the mistletoe tradition. In the 18th century, the English gave a new twist to the old mistletoe custom, turning it into a romantic Christmas ritual. They hung a mistletoe branch decorated with fabric strips high up in the room. Below it stood a young woman ready to receive kisses from the young men, who couldn't refuse the invitation. These kisses could symbolize simple friendship or indicate deeper interest. With each encounter, one of the decorations was removed, marking the passage of time and the intensity of the moment. Once all the adornments were gone, the series of kisses came to an end, leaving behind the mystery and charm of that collective gesture. Number 12. Using mistletoe for forgiveness. In the past, mistletoe was connected to practices quite different from what we know today. While it's common to associate it with kisses and hugs during the Christmas season, its history holds a lesser-known side marked by bans and forgiveness rituals. At one point, religious leaders in England decided to ban the use of mistletoe because they believed its presence evoked Druid values, viewing it as a sign of friendship. Despite these restrictions, the tradition found a way to express itself uniquely in the United Kingdom. At York Minster Church every winter, there was a gathering where criminals presented their mistletoe branches and received forgiveness for their actions. It was a solemn moment, proclaiming a sort of public amnesty, freeing those deemed unworthy of their burdens at the cathedral's gates. Today, mistletoe maintains its symbolic presence in churches during the Christmas season. Even though times have changed, the habit of seeing it on altars still hints at ancient echoes, reminding us that once, this branch served not only to unite couples under a kiss, but also to free lives from past guilt. Number 13. The Christmas tree. The Christmas tree, present in many countries, has become a globally recognized symbol largely thanks to Germany's influence. Many historians believe that Germans were the first to decorate a tree during this time of year, based on old pagan rituals that included evergreen branches. However, some attribute this origin to other places like Latvia and Estonia, whose versions also claim to have played an initial role in this custom. In Germany, the tree was known as the Tannenbaum and was usually adorned with candles and small keepsakes. For example, the candles could be interpreted in different ways, representing Christ in Christian tradition or the sun in ancient pagan rites. This mix of meanings sparked interest in other regions, spreading the tradition across Europe, reaching the Americas and eventually the rest of the world. Additionally, German creativity wasn't limited to the Christmas tree. In the same cultural environment, Advent wreaths, decorative cascades, and the famous Christmas markets emerged, further strengthening the season's symbolism. Number 14. The popularity of the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree originated in Germany, but it was between 1840 and 1850 that it gained prominence in Great Britain, thanks to Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. The Queen was close to this custom due to her mother's influence, who was German. But among the British, it was not yet common to decorate an entire tree for Christmas. Everything began to change in 1848, when the newspaper Illustrate London News published an image of the royal family gathered around a decorated tree at Windsor Castle. Candles, sweets, and other ornaments appeared in the drawing, sparking public interest. Sometime later, the same illustration was reproduced in the United States in a slightly adapted version. In this process, Victoria was depicted with a tiara, and Albert appeared with a mustache, details that helped make the scene more appealing to Americans. The image's impact crossed borders. Gradually, the custom of decorating the tree spread, becoming common not only in the United Kingdom, but also in the United States, and then in many other parts of the world. Thus, the Christmas tradition went beyond palaces, newspapers, and continents, gaining space in diverse homes and becoming part of the global Christmas imagination. Number 15. The Christmas tree in Christianity. One of the versions that explains the origin of the Christmas tree in Christianity dates back to the actions of the Benedictine monk Boniface in the 8th century during his missionary work in the region we now know as Germany. According to researcher Dominic Wilson from the University of Sydney, the most well-known narrative tells that Boniface encountered a group of natives offering sacrifices in front of sturdy oaks, trees considered sacred to the god Thor. The legend says that Boniface, upon witnessing these rituals, used an axe to cut down the oaks and end idolatry. In this account, after one of the trunks fell, a fir tree sprouted in its place. This new tree, always green, then came to be seen as a sign of eternal life, an element representing Christ and, by its triangular shape, the Trinity itself. Thus, the tradition of bringing the fir tree into homes gained space, gradually transforming into a Christian symbol associated with Christmas. Although historical records do not confirm these details, the weight of this story over the centuries contributed to the tree image becoming an integral part of Christian Christmas celebrations, carrying spiritual meanings that inspire generations. Number 16. Christmas lights. Thomas Edison paved the way by experimenting with electric lighting on a Christmas tree. Shortly after, Edward H. Johnson developed about 80 colored bulbs, combining red, white, and blue tones, and on December 22, 1882, in New York, he lit his tree with electric light for the first time. The novelty caught attention, and General Electric quickly turned this idea into an affordable product, spreading the practice and establishing a tradition that would become an essential part of holiday celebrations. Number 17. Christmas gifts. The tradition of exchanging gifts at Christmas has deep roots in the story narrated in the Gospel of Matthew. There, the Star of Bethlehem guides the Magi to the place where Jesus was born, at which point they offer him incense, gold, and myrrh. With this gesture, they not only revere the child, but also recognize his spiritual importance. Over time, Christianity incorporated rituals from other cultures, and gift-giving became an element absorbed from these festivities. However, the religious origin remains in the Magi's gesture, reinforcing the sense of honoring what Jesus represents. Number 18. Christmas Serenade. Today, singing door-to-door during Christmas often brings to mind calm and friendly scenes, but the reality was quite different in the 18th century. According to historian Thomas Christensen, groups of singers known as wassailers would knock on doors demanding food and drink, and they didn't hesitate to resort to violence to get them. Sometimes drunk, they would go on to destroy property and even commit rapes. The threat was direct. If residents didn't open the door, it would be knocked down. This climate of fear and disorder eventually led some religious authorities to attack Christmas itself. A minister, for example, criticized the date for believing it encouraged violent and unruly behavior. Thus, the practice that today seems like a festive and innocent act was once a source of tension and danger, revealing a dark side of old Christmas traditions. Number 19. King Wenceslas. A well-known Christmas carol, Good King Wenceslas, tells the story of a king who, on St. Stephen's Day, December 26th, braves the snow to help a poor man. However, the person who inspired this story lived a very different reality. Wenceslas then was born in 907 AD and lost his father at a young age, being raised by his mother. Years later, in 935, while praying in front of a church, he was attacked with a spear and killed on the spot, his body being dismembered. The contrast between the generosity present in the song and the brutality of this king's fate shows that behind certain Christmas traditions, there are real episodes marked by violence and suffering. Number 20. The Nutcracker. Many people associate the Nutcracker with the famous ballet and sweet Christmas scenes, but the story that inspired it, written by German author E.T.A. Hoffmann in 1816, has a very different vibe. The tale follows Mary, a 7-year-old girl, who experiences something unexpected. Her Nutcracker comes to life right before her eyes, and in the chaos, she ends up hurting her own arm. During her recovery, Mary is visited by her godfather, who decides to entertain her with an intriguing story. He tells the story of a man cursed to look like a nutcracker. In this setting, the figure that seemed just strange is part of a much more complex world, where ruthless queens wield their power and the idea of beauty is questioned. As time passes, Mary ignores the unusual appearance of this man, and a year later decides to join him in the doll kingdom. This part of the plot is striking and raises questions, as it involves an 8-year-old child entering into a marriage. Number 21. Saint Nicholas. Nicholas of Bari was born in a region that is now part of Turkey around 280 AD and served as a Christian bishop for many years. He used to share what he had with those in need, traveling through rural areas to help people in tough situations. Over time, people began to see him as a holy man, and there are accounts of sailors who claim to have been saved from a storm at sea after invoking God through their prayers. It's also said that he fervently asked for divine protection for a group of children threatened by an attacker. These actions solidified his reputation as a protector of travelers, children, and sailors, making his name passed down through generations. Thus, over time, Nicholas of Bari became known as Saint Nicholas, keeping his influence alive among many peoples and cultures. Number 22. The Chimney. When thinking of someone coming down the chimney, the first image is usually the jolly figure delivering presents. However, old stories in Europe show another side of this narrow passage, used not just by a festive character, but by beings capable of disturbing those inside. In Scottish and English traditions, there are tales of a household spirit that roamed homes at night, using chimneys to come and go unseen. In the Middle Ages, many believed that witches used the same path to invade homes. In Greece, the legend of goblins reinforces this theme, featuring creatures that also preferred entry from above to spread fear and disorder. Number 23. The ban on Christmas in the United States. In the early colonial period in North America, English communities maintained different customs. In some areas, families gathered for quiet meals, while in others the atmosphere resembled older celebrations with practices many considered pagan. This mix of habits led to the banning of Christmas in certain places, even if only for a short time. In Boston, for example, between 1659 and 1681, anyone who insisted on celebrating the date was fined. The rule was enforced by Puritans from England, who were stricter than Cromwell's followers, and it directly impacted how people experienced that time of year. At the same time, in Jamestown, the celebration continued without restrictions. As decades passed, the end of the American Revolution caused many English traditions to lose their strength, including Christmas itself. It wasn't until 1870 that the holiday was officially recognized as a federal holiday in the United States, paving the way for the middle class to create a new home environment around it. Thus, the date was brought back into homes and took on a character closer to what we know today, becoming a warm and family-oriented time. Number 24. The Reinvention of Christmas. In the early 19th century, the United States was going through a period of deep changes. Christmas, still seen by many as a loud and conflict-filled time, needed a new identity. Social tension was rising with unemployment, and gangs were taking advantage of the season to cause chaos. In 1828, after a riot during this period, New York City's first police force was established, leading some to think of ways to change the course of these celebrations. It was in this context that Washington Irving stood out. While writing about Christmas in an English mansion, he described an environment where the homeowner welcomed peasants from different backgrounds, and everyone coexisted peacefully. In his accounts, Christmas was no longer just a hectic public event, but a time to bring people together around common values, setting aside social distinctions. Irving's proposal helped reshape the understanding of Christmas in the United States. Gradually, the holiday stopped being just another time of turmoil and transformed into a peaceful occasion, focused on home and harmonious interactions among people from different groups. Guided by the writer's vision, Americans began to build a celebration more in line with what we know today. Number 25. St. Nicholas and Santa Claus. As Christmas traditions spread to different regions, the name given to the figure who distributes presents also changed over time. The word Santa Claus came from the Dutch Sinterklaas, a shorter version of St. Nicholas. This linguistic adaptation influenced various countries, resulting in variations like Saint Nicholas and Papai Noel. So even with different names, the essence of this festive figure stayed alive in the diverse cultures that adopted the tradition. Number 26. Santa Claus character. In the late 19th century, a poem deeply changed how Christmas was imagined. Titled An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, the work became famous with its first line, "Was the night before Christmas," and was written by Clement Clarke Moore, an Episcopal minister who taught Greek and Oriental literature. In this text, a cheerful figure ready to deliver toys from one home to another in a flying sleigh appeared for the first time, embodying the Christmas spirit we know today. The presence of this character placed the family at the center of the celebration, turning Christmas into a time of unity and shared enchantment for everyone. Number 27. The creation of Santa Claus. Clement Clarke Moore built Santa Claus from already known figures to shape the Santa many recognize today. His main source was St. Nicholas, the 4th century bishop, whose image merged with the Dutch Sinterklaas, who was in turn linked to ancient beliefs in Odin, a deity who rode through the skies on an 8-legged horse. When creating his own version, Moore made significant changes. Instead of a tall man, he imagined a shorter being dressed in North American-style clothes, with a pipe in his mouth and a sack of toys always ready. He also had his character fly from house to house in a sleigh pulled by 8 reindeer, giving them names that would be remembered for generations. Moore also changed the darker context surrounding St. Nicholas by removing the strange demon that accompanied him in old legends and scared children. This way, he solidified the image of a Santa Claus very different from previous versions, bringing him closer to the spirit of harmony and joy that dominates modern Christmas. Number 28. Krampus. In old European illustrations, Krampus appeared alongside Santa Claus, serving a very different role from the jolly old man. While Santa rewarded children who had behaved during the year, Krampus dealt with those who hadn't followed the rules. The idea of this being watching children's behavior terrified many kids, and its roots seem to go back to a time before Christianity. In various alpine towns, the tradition still survives through the Krampuslauf. On this occasion, groups of young people dress up as the character, roam the streets, and scare those they meet, especially children. Krampus's fame even extends to the creation of postcards, reinforcing the strong presence of this figure in certain cultures. Number 29. Santa Claus's clothes. In 1881, the image of Santa Claus took the form most recognized today. From that point on, he was depicted with a white beard, red clothes, and features that made him unmistakable. This transformation didn't happen by accident. Cartoonist Thomas Nast, inspired by Clement Clarke Moore's poem, helped build this image. Year after year, Nast added new elements to Santa's appearance and behavior. This is how details like his home at the North Pole and the list where he kept track of children's behavior were born. Throughout the 19th century, these adaptations solidified Santa Claus as a standout figure, ready to cross generations and keep the Christmas tradition alive. Number 30. Milk and cookies. During the Great Depression in the United States, a Christmas practice took shape and gradually spread to other countries. In that time of uncertainty, many parents sought to teach their children the value of generosity and gratitude. To do this, they left cookies and a glass of milk waiting for Santa Claus, believing that even this beloved character could feel the weight of hard times. The intention wasn't just to feed a Christmas symbol, but to show that caring for others mattered as much as receiving presents. By preparing the small offering, families reinforce the idea that sharing and recognizing the efforts of those who bring us joy can make a difference, even in challenging times. Over time, this simple gesture spread to other countries, becoming a tradition in many homes. Number 31. Christmas stockings. There's a story that links the tradition of hanging Christmas stockings to an episode marked by poverty and uncertainty. It's said that at one point an elderly man lamented not having enough resources to provide a dowry for his 3 daughters, making it difficult for them to marry and leaving them without a secure path in life. Upon hearing this lament, Santa Claus decided to intervene. On a silent night, he entered the family's home and saw 3 stockings hanging by the fireplace to dry. There, he placed the necessary funds, so the daughters could have a chance to rebuild their lives. This narrative, mentioned in Donald A.'s texts, shows how old Christmas traditions are tied to compassion and attempts to alleviate suffering during tough times. Over time, Christmas moved away from pagan festivities and incorporated Christian values, bringing families and communities together. Later, the celebrations also took on a secular character, where gift-giving became a significant aspect and boosted the holiday's commercial side. Remembering these stories allows us to see Christmas beyond the sparkle of lights and colorful decorations. There's a complex backdrop filled with meanings, where seemingly simple practices like hanging stockings carry echoes of supportive gestures. Sharing this information can inspire others to reflect on the origins of traditions and understand how values like empathy, generosity, and renewal intertwine with the passage of time. Thus, each year, the deeper meaning of a season that invites us to care for one another is reinforced.